welcome back to the Institute for Black Male Studies interview series, where today we have the honor of interviewing one attorney, Dennis Spurling. Attorney Spurling is licensed to practice law in the state of Louisiana, Texas, New York, and Illinois. Admitted to practice law before the United States Supreme Court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Eastern District of Louisiana, Western District of Louisiana, Middle District of Louisiana, Southern District of Texas, Eastern District of New York, Southern District of New York. He is well established. He's also an independent business owner of Dennis Spurling Attorney at Law and Friends, RDS Holdings, Coffee King International, and Esquire Entertainment. He has earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology and Biological Sciences from Grambling State University, a Juris Doctor of Southern Law University Law Center, a Master of Laws in Environmental and Energy from Tulane University Law School, Master of Science in Biology and Biological Sciences, and a near ABD in his Doctor of Philosophy in Environmental Biology from Texas Southern University. So, thank you for tapping in today, listening. Hope you enjoy. Please make sure you support the Institute for Black Male Studies. You can do so by accessing Patreon. You can look for T. Hassan Johnson. That is myself. I am the founder and lead scholar at the Institute for Black Male Studies. You can support us through Patreon as a regular contributor, or you can do so with a one-time donation. But either way, please do so. Or you can go to instituteforBlackMaleStudies.com, click on merchandise in the menu, and purchase something to support the Institute and walk away with something yourself. Either way, we appreciate your support. We appreciate your patronage, and we hope you enjoy this interview with attorney Dennis Spurling. Thank you. All right. So as we're getting started here, you've transitioned a great deal. You know, you came up from Los Angeles. You've been through the single parent upbringing. You've lived through and survived gang life. You've survived violence. You've survived all kinds of dynamics. Went to school, did a brilliant job as a student, becoming a scientist early on, and then transitioning into both activism as well as law. And now, and this is what I was saying to you earlier, I kind of found you on Facebook, where you were actually just giving life advice, just talking to men. And I found very few people that could just do that could just give other men wisdom. And there was no personal ego. It wasn't about how much money they donated to you. You would just talk to them sitting in your backyard. And now you're on YouTube. You've written a book. Or series of books, actually. How many volumes does your book have at this point?
My book's Rules to Live By, How to Maintain Peace of Mind and Happiness in a Conflicted World is volumes 1, 2, and 3. And basically what I go through is I use my life and the lessons that I've learned and have had to endure on how to resolve the conflict. Book 1 refers to the conflict I endured growing up in South Central LA, gang violence, family issues, domestic violence in the home, and how I was able to reconcile that and put that where it needed to be put so that I could learn the lesson that I need to learn from it. In addition to that, when I go into book 2, I kind of talk about the intellectual conflict that you have to deal with when you get into the academic arena, when you get into the corporate arena, when you're in the law, you're dealing with these political issues that come about. Do you get angry or do you sort through them? Do you figure them out? Do you try to assess what's in your best interest? Because unless you learn how to deal with conflict, then you're not going to be able to have peace in this world. The third volume is about the spiritual conflict, those things that those deep down emotional issues or spiritual things that are deep held. And I was able to dig through my own life, figure out the patterns in my life, and then come out the other side on the path of peace of mind and happiness. I know this is a bit esoteric, but I had to do that for my own growth and development. And because I understand myself now, I'm able to communicate with other men, other Black men specifically, and help them understand what they're going through. Yeah. And that's and that's generally what happened. Once I wrote my books, once I began to understand who I was, it was easy for me to understand the condition that so many other African American men are dealing with in the United States.
Well, I've seen you, and I said this earlier. You're probably one of the most courageous content creators I've seen. and you're just as courageous in private conversation, on television. I mean, this is you. This is, this is not a performance that you seem to put on. This is who you seem to be in general. I've never even seen, I've never seen you be any different in any other space. And it's one of the things I respect about you. But how, because I've seen you cover religion. I've seen you cover politics. I've seen you cover social issues. How is it that you can cover all of these issues and advocate for such an even keel level? You dispense, a judicious criticism evenly across the board. How do you maintain that balance and be as controversial as you are?
Well, Doc, I think that what I try to do is first of all, figure out how I feel, and then separate how I feel from what needs to be said. It's the same thing as if you're practicing law. It doesn't matter how you feel personally about this individual or their character. What you want to do is be an excellent advocate. And so what I'll do is I'll take the facts, I'll figure out whose interests are aligned, whose interests are not aligned, and then I'll begin to deliberate and I'll talk. One thing I try to do is I always try to, there's some ground rules. You want to remain respectful. You don't want to fly off the handle. You want to be thoughtful. Now, on occasion, especially when I'm interacting with folks in the public, remember, we are dealing with the public, right? I won't let them necessarily, just go on and on and on. After they make their point a couple times, I'll cut them off and get in there. But for the most part, man, it just takes a lot of patience and understanding. But I know who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am, and I'm not going to change. And so when I'm speaking to you, it's the same person all the time. It's not
right.
I'm this way for these people, and this I'm going to act like this when I'm on Fox News, and then I'm going to act like this when I'm in Facebook, and then I'm going to act like this when I'm on, in person. I'm just going to be the same person, and that's not controversial to me. That's just me. And what I found is there are other people that feel the same way I do, or appreciate my positions that I take when I'm advocating on their behalf.
Now, we had a little technical issue earlier, so I'm going to have to cover a little bit of ground that we've covered earlier. Right after I found you on Facebook, I'm thinking I'm just listening to this wise brother that's been through some stuff. Then I find out you're a lawyer. Then I find out you're on television and you've had a television show.
Yeah.
And then I start seeing you interviewing on different news channels about some pretty controversial topics. And you ended up becoming kind of infamous in certain circles for advocating for Black men in regard to travel. Talk a little bit about, how these kind of television interviews started and what the blowback was for your perspectives. And of course, what it is you've been arguing.
Well, the television started because, let's go back a little bit. Those of you guys who know me and know that I'm an artist and that I wrote rap songs, and then I decided if I can write these rap songs, I could do music videos, and so I did a little bit of that. But before that, I was doing commercials for the practice of law, and so I began to script the commercials, and I'm like, these are actually kind of funny, and other people would tell me, yeah, these are pretty darn funny. And I figure if I can script a TV commercial, then I can also script a video, a music video for my music. And then I went from there to say, well, I can do a TV. I can do one of these reality shows like so many other people did. So, I'm the type of person, and I tell guys this all the time. The world belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it. You have to see yourself as a conqueror and not the conquered. You have to see yourself as a victor and not a victim. And so what I do is I say, well, I'm not going to wait around for somebody to give me a record deal. I'm going to make my own music. I'm not going to wait around for anybody to give me a job. I'm going to create my own law firm. I'm going to create my own entertainment company. And this is what I've done with my own money. So I went into development. I hired people, didn't really know anything about television other than I had a few guys that had done some commercials for me and a few guys that have done some rap videos, but I talked to them, and then they hooked me up with some other guys who could do a TV show. So $250,000 later, I created a TV show, 2 series, 2 seasons, co-parenting with the Spurlings, featuring myself and my ex-wife. Because at that time in 2015, 2016, when we were recording, I knew then that there was going to be a lot of women raising children outside of marriage, and there was a lot of men who were going to be co-parenting with those children. And so they needed to, what are the rules to co-parenting? We don't have those rules. And I thought this might be a good market. And it turned out it was at that time. It was still a new subject, kind of. People still weren't talking about it. But, not like baby mama-ism is now, 7 years later. And so, people liked it. It was the highest rated show in that area. It was the highest rated show on television, playing here in Houston for 2 seasons. And then from there, people said, well, he's a television guy, and on top of that, he's opinionated. So they would follow me on Facebook. They see the TV show. They saw the commercials. Everything kind of came together. And they said, well, would you like to do an interview with us? And so I'm like, sure. So they brought me on. And see, the difference between me and a lot of other people is I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm going to make the same amount of money I make practicing law every year, no matter what. Matter of fact, it's going to continue increasing. I don't have a boss. I don't have an institution that I have to report back to. And there's nobody that can tell me what to do. Now, there are some benefits to that, and there's some danger. The benefit is that you're free to speak your mind. The danger is that you're free to speak your mind. And so, I try to temper what I say with logic and reason. And, but I will say some things that this culture that we live in would normally cancel people for. But since you can't cancel me, I'm free to speak. And so the people that I choose to advocate for are the ones that are the most difficult to advocate for. And that is Black American men. That's the side that I've chosen. And that's who I advocate for. Now, trust me, if you ever want to make some enemies, go be an advocate for Black American men and Black American boys and speak the truth. I don't mean give them a little lip service and then tell them, well, I'm going to try, y'all need to do better. I mean, you really be an advocate for Black American boys and men, and you stand 10 toes down. You're going to make enemies. You're going to make adversaries. You're going to make people hate you. But I'm okay with that because I think it's something that needs to be done. And we need strong advocates, if for nothing else, to teach these young men and older men and boys how to speak up for themselves.
Well, and absolutely true. And speaking of becoming an advocate and getting a lot of blowback, you started to advocate for Black men who travel.
Yeah.
And I did an interview not long ago on O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel, and we talked about, something I was proposing where I said Black men, in many ways, they need to step out of what I call the Black love velvet painting. I was born in 74. I remember the Black love paintings and the beads in the doorway and all of that, right? And in many ways, I grew up trying to live in that painting.
Me too, man.
And I found that I was often the only one in it. I'd be in relationships, but I'm the only one in this painting, and it didn't work. So I started to say, look, Black men need to step out of this painting and actually deal with the person in front of you for who she is and not who you're trying to make her into.
Yeah.
And so I ended up ending that statement by saying it's also best to, engage women who've been raised in a culture to appreciate masculinity.
Right.
And there's been some blowback. Now, in regard to that, what is it, what are your thoughts about that? And what is it you advocate about travel for Black men related to that?
Well, man, there's a couple of things in there that I grew up in that same era. And so here I am trying to relive Love and Basketball or some Belle Biv DeVoe song. And that's not what the lovely ladies were into, And so you basically, you're a one-man band, you up there by yourself and you just playing your little heart out and you end up playing yourself. You guys understand that analogy. Now, the other thing you guys got to understand is this. The other thing you have to understand is that I was probably already prone to be someone who's willing to step out and go somewhere else. Reason being was I never really was fully beholden to the lovely ladies in the Black American community, largely because, remember, and I don't know if you know this, but my mom sent me off to go live with my adopted father when I was a small child. And so I was actually, as a Black American boy, born to a family, my mother being from Mississippi, I was actually raised by an adopted father and his wife, who was from the Caribbean herself. You know, she was what you would call an Afro-Latina. And so I kind of grew up around them. Now I'm thinking I'm a foreigner. I ain't, you know, y'all ain't like me. You know, I'm a black dude from LA. My mom and them from Mississippi. But, you know, I got a chance to grow up around them. But more importantly, I didn't get that full indoctrination that a lot of black American boys get. So here I am. I'm not eating hog maws and collard greens and pig feet on Christmas Day. I'm eating, you know, maduros and these other sort of things that these folks eat. I'm going to these parties where you got all these Caribbean people around here. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. They're listening to some of these old style bachata Caribbean beats. Whereas if I was at my mother's house, we'd be listening to, you know, the Isley Brothers and all that other stuff. So I was already prone, you know, there wasn't quite that, they didn't quite have their hooks in me enough. And then on top of that, going back to Los Angeles, you know, you have to have a certain reverence for Black American women in order to be beholden to the Black community, to the community, as is said here on the internet. And so I never put Black women or any woman up on a pedestal. Why? Because at the time when I grew up, I saw crackheads who were Black women. I'm certainly not going to treat her like a queen. I saw women who were involved in gangs who would actually do the driving, you know, and then when the guys would pop, you know, they end up in some territory, the guys would think this woman is not going to have anybody in. And next thing you know, two guys pop out and start shooting on them. So I understood the treachery of women. I knew women who would set men up to get robbed. I knew women who were boosters and help you carjack, and they would be act as lures. So growing up in South Central LA in the 80s and 90s, you know, I didn't trust anybody, and I would never be so foolish as to put any woman up on a pedestal, and Black, white, whatever, Hispanic, whatever. And so that was not that. It was easier for me to say, you know what? Well, let me go see if there's something else better somewhere. So at the point where I got divorced and I realized I ain't work, let me go ahead and try to go some other. So the first place I went was the Dominican Republic, and I've never looked back. And that's been 11 years ago. And I realized at that point, from the time I got there, that this is how I'm supposed to be treated, being treated with dignity and respect. And, you know, I got a woman catering to me. And so over the years, I end up actually getting a couple of different houses down there and apartments. And one time I had a house, an apartment. I had a villa. I had all kinds of stuff. I mean, I was there so often. Man, I think one year, in 2016, I spent $50,000 on plane fare. Plane fare, just 50 G's on plane fare. And it got so, I took my sons down to the DR. We stayed there for a month. And then I took them over to my apartment in Colombia, in Bogota. So we went, so you got me and these two Black boys, these two little Black boys from Texas flying first class from Houston down to Miami, over to Dominican Republic, staying in a villa, got maids and butlers and all that stuff. And then from there, we go down to Santo Domingo and go to Daddy's luxury apartment in Bogota, Colombia. And so, you know, that's the life, you know, and so you don't come back. You don't come back after that. You don't really, you can't come back. Even my sons now, and I think this is important too. My sons will never be fully beholden to the mysticism of the Black matriarchy, because they know that there are other opportunities out there for them. I took my boys down to Colombia, and I don't know if you've ever been to Colombia, Doc.
No.
But they have, oh my God, they have some of the most beautiful, physically fit women of all shades down there. Now, the impression that leaves on a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old is probably lifelong. And so, you know, I do that because, you know, I think it's important. And moving forward to Black men, it's okay. You don't have to be 7 or 10, but if you're 17 or 27 or 37 or 47 and you see it, it's just like seeing it as a young man, because you get renewed, like, oh, there's hope. You mean I can go a place where I can get treated with respect, and there are people that look like me. Remember, the vast majority of the Africans that were taken from the West, that were taken from the African continent, they did not land in the United States. They landed in South America. They landed in Central America. They landed in Brazil, Colombia, This is where they went. They went to the Caribbean. This is where they went. So when you leave the United States and you go there, you basically just see your people all over again. These are your roots. These are your people. We all landed on the same hemisphere, just in different places. So that, to me, I feel as welcome there as anywhere else. Matter of fact, sometimes, and I'm using the words of Dr. Ronald Neal, I feel more at home there, or I feel as at home there as anywhere else. But man, I'm just trying to get these brothers to and the thing is, Doc, and this is kind of growing up in South Central LA, man. You see a lot of black men shooting and killing each other, and you begin to wonder, why are these brothers killing me? What's the issue? And then you realize they're angry. They're angry and they feel trapped, they're abused, they've been disrespected, they've been beat, they've been bullied. They don't have the love they need from their home. They don't have the support. So who do they lash out on? And they don't feel good about themselves. So when they see another black man, they have a lot of contempt for themselves and their condition and how they were raised. And so when they see you, they lash out at you as another black man because they don't value themselves. They can't value you. And so all I'm doing is saying, brother, there's other opportunities out there for you. You're not trapped in this pit. Go see what else is out there. Don't be frustrated because, see, it's self-preservation. Mm-hmm. They're going to lash out on you, brother, if they don't have an outlet, if they just feel trapped like that. Yeah. And so, my thing is, hey, man, you got hope. I just try to give the brothers hope. That's it, man. Okay. Just travel, get a plane ticket, go overseas, chill for a couple of days. And then that way you see, man, there's more out there than just what you've been lied to and told.
Yeah, and I think I'm starting to really understand that because once you've grown up in one country and spent the entirety of your time there, you can convince yourself that this is all there is.
Right.
This is all life can be. And you end up making sometimes some pretty, heavy decisions with an understanding that isn't accurate because you haven't been introduced to anything else.
You know why they do that, brother?
What's up?
They do that because they don't want to think that they missed out on anything. They begin to tell themselves at 28, 29, 30, oh, there's nothing else out there. Because if they then convince themselves that there is something else out there, then that means for the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, they've been missing out. And they might actually have regret. Why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I spend this $300 and go down here to the Dominican Republic and hang out for a week and get treated well? Why didn't I go down to Colombia when I was 40 instead of waiting until I'm 55? Because now, life don't last forever, and I could have been doing this at 20. I wouldn't have had all those issues that I had dealing with women at 25. I call her, she don't call me back. I send a text message. I hit her up on her pager. I ain't heard from her in a week. You mean I could go down here and have one of the most beautiful sets of women. I can have them come in 10 at a time, and they're cool with me for just being me. That's a starting point. Now, let's just also talk about the culture. The culture respects men generally. So you get respect. You get to be in a culture where you look like everybody else. Unless you open your mouth, they don't even know you're not from here. You blend in. You like the food. You like to dance. You love the weather. And you have this beautiful woman to boot. So yeah, you would have regrets if you waited till you was 55, 60 years old before you start traveling. And so they lie to themselves and tell them ain't nothing else out there because it allows them to be better where they are.
Now let's go back a little. Because we're still talking about the black family.
Yeah,
talking about the issues that have been a problem in terms of where the black family has come to in 2021. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the family court, about how that plays into black men's experiences, because obviously something led up to this need to travel, this need to experience life outside the U.S. We didn't see this kind of thing in the 1950s in the same kind of way.
Right.
Place in regard to the family court that really put black men on a different trajectory, in your opinion?
Well, let me say it like this, man. And I know the ladies are not going to like to hear what I'm going to say, but I'm speaking to you as a father. I'm speaking to you as your brother. I'm your uncle. I'm speaking to you as an uncle. Men are lazy. The reason, and especially when it comes to sex, the reason that a lot of a lot of doctors end up with nurses, and a lot of lawyers end up with secretaries is because they're lazy when it comes to sex. They'll have sex with whoever's available, the woman that's available. That's why the lawyers end up messing around with the secretaries, the doctors end up messing around with the nurses, and people like Arnold Schwarzenegger end up getting the maid pregnant. Not that she was prettier, it was just that she was available. So what does it say if the men in your group are willing to pay for plane tickets, travel overseas, spend hotels, spend money for hotels, stay over there, be away from work, miss days from work just to be with those women, and oftentimes paying those women to be with them, whether they paying it straight up as if she's a working girl or they paying for her to live a certain life because that's their girlfriend or their wife. What does it say about the women that they're leaving that you would rather go somewhere else, go through the inconvenience and end up spending time, money, and resources to be with another woman, to be with these women, rather than be with these women who are right here and available and free? What does that say about these women they're leaving? That says that they must be pretty bad. That's what it says. And that's the hard truth. And I know nobody wants to hear it, but it's the truth. It means what? Something happened between the 1950s in 1960s when black men went from being the most married men in the country to being to 2021 when they're the least married men. What happened? Well, our ladies began to have children outside of wedlock. They began to tell us they're strong, independent, and don't need a man. And as of the 1980s and 90s, the reason it's gotten so bad for black men that they said, well, I don't even want to deal with this, and the woman is in a situation where she's been incentivized to separate herself from the children's father. We're talking about family court. Let's go back and let's talk about the welfare system. The welfare system has incentivized women to have children outside of wedlock because they'll get paid for those children. If they have a man in the house, typically they won't receive any compensation. So what do you get? I can have this man, I have to listen to him, I probably got to cook and clean for him and deal with his crap, or I can have this money and the children and my freedom. Now, it might not be a lot of money, but they'll give me a house, they'll give me food stamps, they'll give me a monthly stipend. It may not be a much, but it's a subsistence. And on top of that, I don't have to work. And for the most part, I get to be in charge of the house. I get total control of the house and the children. I get to dictate the terms of the relationship with the man and the children. He can see the kids when I want him to see the kids. Got it. So in that particular case, you've incentivized Black American women who already have been told by society, going back to slavery days, that this Black American man ain't no good. And, you only dealing with him because you had to, because you needed to be together, in a segregated society. It's just us. So we needed each other. But now you don't need each other. When I say need, you need air, you need water. You don't need a man because you got the check, you got a place to live, you got police if you need somebody to come and enforce something. And you got food stamps and you have your children. They don't necessarily need you. So there's a financial incentive to keep the relationships separate and apart. Fast forward to the 1990s, 1980s, Reagan had ushered in no-fault divorce through California, and it kind of spread like wildfire throughout the rest of America. Before that, you had to have something like a covenant marriage where, if you want to get a divorce, you have to state specific reasons, and only for certain reasons would you be granted a divorce. And then oftentimes, pre-1950s, the men would get the house, the children, because they were the patriarch and they would basically get all the goodies. After the 1990s, community property and all that sort of stuff kicked in. Well, women would get half the money. So if you got a man who's a primary breadwinner, didn't matter. Didn't matter if he was worth $45 million and you were a maid with him and, you stayed home the whole time. You still get half of that, plus you get the house. And if you have children under the age of 18, you get the kids, plus you get a monthly stipend in the form of child support and alimony sometimes. So you get the house, you get half the money, you get this money, you get the kid. Well, I stay married, and you don't have to deal with him anymore. So at this point, black men and white men post the 1990s are dealing with the same thing. We both got women who are benefiting from a financial incentive for them to get a divorce, reinforced by our legal justice system, by our family law system. So you wonder why the trend is get a divorce. You wonder why we have 80% out of wedlock birth rate in the United States, because there's a financial incentive to do so. The government, through its policies or through its negligent policies or its failed policies, has created an incentive to get away, to do away with the family. Now, by contrast, when you go overseas, they don't have that. They don't have these social systems set up that'll take care of you if you have a baby, not across the board, especially in less developed countries. So you got black and brown women down there who oftentimes, because they don't have the resources that we have, they're not overeating. They're not indulging in all these material things, even though they might want to. They don't. And so they end up being physically fit. They're cooperative. They're pretty. Most of them are young. Many of them don't even have children. And so you got a man who's 35, 36 years old. He's been working 10, 15 years in his career. He's been making $40,000, $50,000 a year. He goes to a place like Colombia where you got these drop dead gorgeous, beautiful women, and then they treat him like he's a king. What is he supposed to do? Then word gets around. Next thing you know, you got all these brothers saying, well, I want some of that too, as opposed to dealing with this strong, independent woman who has 3 or 4 kids, who grew up, feeling entitled and will treat me like a utility. This is their option. So yeah, they're going to get on. They rather deal with these women than deal with you. And that's unfortunate. But, the problem that we have is most American women, especially our lovely ladies, don't think that black men are worthy of competing for. They don't want to compete for you because they feel like society has told them that you're not worthy of being competed for. We got all the negative tropes. We're horrible daddies. We're thugs. What else do they say about us? We're no good for anything.
We're the face of domestic violence,
yeah,
rape and abuse, and
right. And when you dig into those stats, it's all false. But these women are of the opinion, why should I have to compete for that? But see, what they don't realize, these other women have men that are far worse than us, and not just made up stats. Right. They're really worse. Like they're actually worse. They say we are the worst, but when you go overseas and you deal with, they're like, these American guys are nice. Matter of fact, they think you're soft. You're some of the softest, sweetest, nicest dudes, especially black American men, compared to some of the guys they deal with. So when we get over there, they eat us up. They don't care how much you weigh. They don't care how tall you are. You're nice to them. You talk nice to them. You're sweet to them. And they like, yeah, I'm gonna work with this guy. And that's what's happening right now. And here's another thing. Now these women are coming over here. See, a lot of black American women think that their main competition is these white women. It's not your competition. Your competition are going to be these Latino women coming up from El Salvador and Colombia and Honduras and Mexico. That's going to be your competition, because those women will take that same man who you don't think is making enough for you. The average black man makes $42,000 a year. They will take that same man that you don't deem as worthy and turn and make a family man out of him. I've seen it happen. 30% of, and that's just the lower level black men. That's the blue collar brothers. 64% of black men are in the middle class. 20% of that group is rich. Those women are not going to let these men that you reject be on the market that long. They're going to take them and they're going to swoop them up. That's what's going to happen. And then as far as your higher upper echelon group of men, your college graduate, your professionals, 30% of those men in these newer generations are marrying out. So you're getting your fuse is being burned from both sides. That's what's happening. And these ladies refuse to compete. So it is what it is. And on the flip side, the black women, they're taking these femininity courses, and they're going to get swooped up by these guys too. It is what it is. They're going to. So this is what's happening right now to the black community.
I heard a response to one of the videos I did where a brother was saying, well, all these black men who are chasing after women from other countries, the men from those other countries aren't going to respect them. They're going to try and keep black men out because black men couldn't handle their own women and these kind of tropes. And one of the things I think people overlook is something you just said. It's not black men going overseas finding other women. That's not the only thing that's happening. Other women,
yeah,
you pointed out, are competing for black men, and this is not something black men are used to. I mean, because we know there was a period of time in American history where you could be lynched getting with a woman that wasn't black. It wasn't even, especially white. We talking about white women, but we come out of that history, and now there are women that are looking for American black men. So the trope that I hear, especially more from feminist camp, is those women just want to be American citizens. Those women just want to use black men. Talk a little bit about that. Is that the case? What are you saying?
But here's the thing. You're saying you're complaining about women from overseas wanting to use black American men? What about all the black American women that are using black American men? So basically what I'm saying is we're used to it. That's what women do. Women do use men as utilities. Women do use you for support and provision and to give them children. That's what we expect. But what we also expect is for you to give something back. That is cooperation. That is attention. That is affection. That is to be physically fit. You're complaining about these women using black men, but that's what you've done. All we're saying is if you would give us what we're supposed to get in exchange for being used, everything would be fine, but you're not. And so now they're going places where women are willing to fulfill that contract. I didn't like this supplier. I'm going somewhere else to another supplier. If you want to look at it in business terms, I wanted the highest quality product I can get for my time, my energy, my resources. And so that's what they're doing. As far as these guys from overseas, here's what you got to understand. First of all, those same guys that are complaining about black men going overseas, taking their women, are the same guys that come over to the United States and take our jobs. If you want to talk about it like that. So if you want to stop taking our, if you want black men to stop, or any American men to stop coming overseas dating your women, then you should stop coming to America and taking our resources. But both of those arguments are kind of nil, but the rationale is the same. The truth is, immigrants come to the country. Yeah, they take some jobs, but most of these are jobs they don't want. Right. Same thing when we go overseas. You got to understand something. These guys have, first of all, don't take this the wrong way, but on a scale of 1 to 10, if we're looking at a woman who's a 6 in Colombia, she's a 10. She's a 10 here.
Okay.
And these guys are hard on women. They are hard on women. These guys in Colombia and South America and Central America and all these places where they have a plethora of beautiful women, and I'm sure it's the same way in Africa. They are harder because they got so many of them. So they don't really care, And so the brothers, the few black men that have the money that they're able to go with women, so an educated man, basically you're rich there. You see here, you and I, we average, we 6 figures, high 6 figures, low 6 figures, whatever. Over there, you're rich.
Okay.
And so they got to choose between you, this black man, or this man who makes 10, 15 times more than they make in a year, in a month. And this guy over here that they've been dealing with, who might be a taxi driver or some low-level laborer. They're going to choose you because that's the nature of women. These women are choosing these men. Mm-hmm. Women are not racially loyal. Only men are loyal to the race. So, that's the situation we're dealing with. But those men aren't going. Those women are waiting for them when they get off the plane. Mm. You see what I mean? If you got a problem with anybody, you have a problem with your women. But the truth is, there's nothing they can do about it because we're Americans. And Americans, it's just, we're Americans. We're just exploiting the fact now that we're Americans. That blue passport you have carries a lot more weight. There's nothing they can do about it. We reign supreme on this planet. And let me tell you something else, man. And this is crazy. The more you start traveling, the more you'll appreciate you being an American, because you begin to see how you get treated overseas. Now, I'm not saying go over there and be a jerk. I'm saying go over there and you'll see how far your money goes and how well you're treated. People are catered to you. Now, if you were, let's say you were a black man down in Honduras, you would get a different experience than a black man who's visiting Honduras who's an American. You understand what I'm saying? Or some of these different places, because your social status is higher because you're an American. So that's your pedigree. You might as well exploit it.
But you also intimated once that the competition between Black American men and other countries for women isn't as extreme as one might think, because there's a whole different aesthetic going on between how Black men see beauty and how men see beauty. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
So, they have okay, so I like Black women. I like Afro-Latinas. I like African women. I love Black American women. I love Black women. I mean, I think I dated an Asian woman once. And that was about the only time I really actually dated a woman that was outside of my race. And she was cool. But I like Black women. And whether they're from the Caribbean, whether they're African, whether they're African American, I like Black women. When I go to Colombia, I still like Black women. But the men in Colombia, their standard of beauty is they like women who look more European. So the Colombian women that they would end up dating would be the long, European looking women. I like a woman with some color. I like a woman that's Black. And they basically treat those women like they're of a lower social class and a lower social status. Same thing in the Dominican Republic. The lighter you are, the more they want you. You see, that's their standard of beauty. Whereas me, I go to the Dominican Republic. I like the brown girls. I like the girls that look like me. I like the girls that are of my hue and built like a woman who is of African descent, like somebody you find here in the United States. So we're not really in competition for the same women. We just go in there basically dating the Black women that are over there for the most part. And of course, guys are dating women and of all different arrays. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, but the vast majority of Black men like the Black woman phenotype. They just can't find what they want here in the United States. Either these women are so overweight, or they bring in so much luggage and baggage to the relationship. You got student loan debt, 5 kids, about 18 different dudes, got a car note, a dog. You got all this other stuff. Men don't want to deal with that. They want something they can, hey, let me pick you up and we can work and build a life together.
Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Hey, damn. Now, recently you started to really become controversial because of various public issues, one of which is COVID. And most people may not know that you have a background in not just law, but also in science.
Right.
I'd like to know your thoughts about COVID, but I'd like you to start with telling people your educational pedigree and because that really puts your opinion about something like COVID in a very different place than someone who's just been watching a number of BitChute and YouTube videos, because that's what I've run across lately. Everybody's a scientist now. They watch a bunch of obscure videos, obscure emails, and then all of a sudden everybody is a CRISPR scientist. So tell us a little bit about your background educationally, what your degrees are, and then and give us your thoughts on what's going on with COVID.
All right. Well, so I started off, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And so I went to Grambling State University. I majored in biology. And I graduated from there. Now, my initial plan was to go and get a degree, a medical degree or a veterinarian degree. Then I kind of wavered with that, decided, well, I don't want to go to medical school. I don't want to go to veterinarian school. I just want to be a scientist and work in a laboratory. But either way, one of my professors there, he said, I don't think you're going to be, you got good grades, but they're not to the level where you would be a medical school candidate. I had a good B average. That was awesome. But he said, you should think about going to law school. So I said, okay. So I enrolled at Southern University. They had an environmental law program. So that kind of relates to my background in biology. But I still had that hunger for law. So I still had that hunger for science. So at the point where I was about to finish with my JD, I said, well, I'll just go get my PhD from Southern University in environmental molecular toxicology. But I did some activist sort of stuff and some activism. And what ended up happening was, and I'd already got accepted in the program at Southern, it was new at that time, but through my activist stuff, and it was having to do with environmental, environmental racism issues surrounding the burning of napalm at next to the Southern University campus. So basically, napalm and gasoline are mixed together and burn at this plant, which creates vanilla. But the fumes emit and they come out in the neighborhood in North Baton Rouge, and next to that neighborhood or within that vicinity is the Southern University Law Center and the law school and the undergraduate and the whole complex, which would then expose these young children, these young people, breeding age children, to all these different chemicals. So as an advocate, I went out and spoke on behalf of the student university, the students at the university. I ended up on the press. I ended up in front of the Louisiana legislator. I was quoted in the newspaper as saying that President Mike Foster, who is the Governor Mike Foster, his administration has been a cancer on the people of Louisiana. That went all over the press. The people down at Tulane got hold of that, and they said, "You're the type of advocate we need. We need somebody who's willing to speak up on behalf of Black people. We can't do it. You look like, you don't care, so we want to give you a scholarship to attend our university." So I didn't end up going to the PhD program at Southern. I went down to law school again and finished the LLM and started the LLM program in environmental and energy related law at Tulane. It was very science oriented. We learned about, different chemicals and toxins and, how the law applies to that. And so, I finished that up in about a year. I went back and forth, I practiced law with a group of people. Hurricane Katrina hit. I ended up coming to Houston. About 4 years after that, I got a divorce. And here I am, 2010, still relatively young. And I still have this hunger for science. So what I decided to do was keep myself out of trouble, because at that point I was making money. I was a bachelor, didn't really have any serious responsibilities. So as you can imagine, I was getting in a little bit too much trouble. And so I said, let me go ahead and buckle down and do something productive with this time. So me being the person that I am, I enrolled at Texas Southern University in their master's degree program, and master's degree in science and biological science. So I conducted a lot of different experiments. I remember one of the experiments was I replicated an experiment where you would grow different plants and expose them to different environmental factors like different sound and music and chemicals and stuff like that, and see how they grew. And I still actually have that notebook. But either way, I finished the program. It's a 3-4-year program, 2-year program. I finished it in a year. And I said, well, that was easy. I'm still not out of the woods. I still got all this energy. I think, just so you know the type of stuff I would have been doing, I had went down to Miami Beach and had 12 shots of Patron at the Clevelander. And so it's like, yeah, you don't want to be here. You need to find something else better than 2010. And I think this is probably 6 months later. I was in the Dominican Republic in this little place called Sosua. And this is 10 years ago. And apparently there was a record of marijuana shots. And I decided that I wanted to beat that record. And at that time, it was held by an Iraqi war veteran, a brother, and he had taken 40 shots of marijuana. So, me being in the stupor that I was in, I said, well, hell, I'm going to do it. So I got to shot number 26. I remember I got to shot number 26. And as I recall, I ended up on the beach somewhere, laid out on the ground, and there was this beautiful Dominican woman who had decided to allow me to rest my weary head on her lap. And so that's pretty much what I was doing before I decided to enroll in school, recognizing that was not probably a wise course of action. I decided to enroll in school. So again, I finished the master's degree program, decided then to enroll in 2 different programs, the PhD in environmental molecular toxicology and the PhD program in environmental in environmental planning, because I wanted to get both PhDs out the way to have with the master's. I was working on my thesis. I blew through their program in a year and a half. So I took all the classes that they had to offer, at least in the environmental science class. All I had was 9 credit hours left. I had a 3.79 GPA. And so I just needed to take 3 more classes, and then I could have started working on my dissertation. But at that point, it was I think spring of 2014, and I had to get back to practicing law. Things had gotten busy. The litigation became intense. It kept me out of trouble, but that's my one regret, Dr. Johnson, that I didn't get my PhDs and finish writing my thesis. But yeah, so my science game is pretty heavy. I ain't doctor level, I ain't up there, but I can tell you about an alkane and an alkyne. I got you. You know what I mean? I can tell you, this is what I do. But that's my first love. So when I talk to you about COVID-19, and I understand, I generally try to talk in terms about immunology and I just try to get people to talk about it, and I'm not so concerned with what they want to do, because a lot of people, they don't want to take the shot. They're afraid. And I recognize they're afraid. But see, what they're also afraid of is they don't want to be held to the consequences. Now, I want you to come back in here for a minute, Doc. I want you to ease back in here because I need to see your face. So this is what I'm doing to them, Doc. What I done was, and you might have seen some of it on my page.
Okay.
My page is to try to help Black men develop. I will defend you, but I also will hit you in the mouth to make you defend yourself, because I'm not going to be here all this time. You're going to have to learn to fight for yourself. Uncle D will defend you, but I'm the same person that will help, that will fight your battles. But then I'm going to teach you how to fight when we get back home in the backyard. So I'm going to punch you in the neck. You see what I mean? And if you fall down, I'm going to kick you until you get back up. I've told people all the time, I will drag you to the finish. This is the type of person I am. Because see, I'm relentless with myself. I don't have any mercy on myself. How you think I got 6 rap albums and 3 degrees and a law business, an entertainment business? How do you, and 2 TV shows and 3 books? How do you think I got all that done?
Right.
You see, because I'm relentless and I won't quit. But see, I'm not here. I can't defend your best. See, a lot of Black men, brother, they want somebody else to fight for them. They want a savior.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to be your advocate. But at some point, you're going to have to learn to fight. And you're going to have to learn how to fight, when to fight, and where to fight. So what I've done, and here's what I've done. I basically put up a post that says this. I said that just to, because I know their nerves are bad. We're in a crisis situation. I put a post up that says, those of you who are anti-vaxxers, I want to hold you to that.
Okay.
So if you don't believe in preventative medicine, i.e. taking the vaccination, that's fine. Your body, your choice. That's what the ladies say. And I agree with that. Same thing goes for the brothers. But if you happen to contract COVID-19, and I hope you don't, but if you do, I want you to stay out of the hospitals. Don't go to the hospitals. Tough it out at the house, tough guy.
Uh-oh.
And so what that did was, see, a lot of people, they don't really want to take agency. Just like our lovely ladies don't want to take agency for sleeping with 3 different dudes and having 3 different babies by 3 different dudes. Uh-oh. They don't want to accept agency because it is their strong held belief that some man is supposed to help to take care of them. That's what they've been taught by society. Some man, the government, the white man, or the nearest Black man is supposed to help take care of me. This is what I believe. I'm not responsible for this baby. Okay. On the flip side, most Americans, Black men included, have a strong held belief that they're entitled to medical treatment. That's not the same anywhere else in the world. You pay or you die. Yeah. But the bottom line is we have that entitlement. So now what do you do in a situation where somebody hits you in your strong held beliefs and then binds you to that ruling by saying, number one, you can't go back if you get sick, and number two, if you do go back, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite if you go back. What that does is, because see that what they were planning on doing was, if they get sick, then they're gonna they're gonna have it both ways. I don't want to take this doggone shot because I'm supposed to die in 2 years. I'm afraid of that. It's gonna make my testicles fall off. I don't want to do that. I'm afraid. But if I get sick, I want to go to the hospital. In the meantime, You have people in the hospitals who need other treatment for other things, and it's an inconvenience to other people. We've heard the stories. You got people, I can't get my diabetes, and that's what happened last year. We saw what happened. The hospitals were filled up with other folk and had COVID-19. So that's the ready crisis right there. A lot of brothers, they couldn't deal with it. They start calling me boule, told me I was an agent.
What?
They told me I was an elitist.
Wow.
But this is them lashing out of anger. You see, it's not their fault. They're angry because of that. Okay. And see, it's not, and they see me as a black man. And we go back to what I was telling you, or what I say earlier, is that we have been taught to have little to no self-esteem for ourselves and to think very little of black men. We as black men have been taught that, just like our lovely ladies have been taught that. That's why they refuse to compete with us. So when you hear this information coming from a black man, you're already looking at it with a jaundiced eye. Okay. That's already a problem. But now when I'm telling you, now when I'm holding your feet to the fire and telling you what you can't do, now it's really a problem. But again, it made them angry. It made them frustrated. It made them lash out. This is the same problem that black men have with each other on the street. Mm-hmm. See, you'll let that white man talk bad about you. Mm-hmm. But if the black man look at you wrong, right, you want to go ahead and pull your pistol out on them. Mm-hmm. And so what we have to do is an exercise in thinking through things logically, leadership, because you want to make the most logical decision, and also conflict resolution. Right. So, because they have to learn how to fight them. Because the minute you start cussing people out and calling them names, they're going to dismiss you. Right. So the reason they like me is because, and they can't dismiss me, is because I have certain rules by which I discuss things and I argue. And you may not like what I say, but oftentimes you're left with refuting the facts or the argument. You can't just attack me as a human being because I didn't give you anything to attack. So it's an exercise, but they don't like it. They're very upset.
Well, I tell you, the reason I asked you is obviously, since this is the Institute for Black Male Studies, I'm looking at it through the lens of the black male experience. Mm-hmm. I know that as far as 2020 is concerned, black men lost the largest number of years off their life expectancy. They lost 3 years off of our life expectancy just from 2020. And then when you factor in and really begin to look at who's dying most in relation to the mortality rates in regard to COVID, it's black men.
I saw that.
Even last summer, when this really, really kicked off during the lockdown, we were hearing about black men, but then all of a sudden they weren't really reporting on it as often. Then it became about the she session and a number of other things. But black men have still continued to be the primary group dying, even during this Delta variant moment. It's still black men that are dying the most. And so, when I heard you speaking out about it and challenging people on their beliefs, I was looking at it from that vantage point because, and this is the last part I'll add, I had just read an article about doctors and nurses experiencing basically PTSD.
Right.
In these hospitals, and mainly because over 97% of the people who were coming in sick were unvaccinated. So they were looking at it like they were already exhausted. We saw it last year as well, but they were even more exhausted because you're talking about people who willingly wouldn't get a vaccination, but like you say, would come into the hospital. So when I added up all these factors, the loss of life expectancy, who's dying most, and then doctors and nurses starting to pull back, I'm saying this is a bad recipe for black men.
Right. And that was the article that inspired me to go ahead and make that post.
Okay.
And I actually probably saw it on your page. Because see, if I'm a medical, and initially I plan to actually have some medical doctors, some black medical doctors, and some hospital administrators. And they're going to, at some point, come in here and explain to you that these doctors and these nurses are not robots. If they have a choice between treating someone who is unvaccinated and saving this kid who was in a car accident, or this old man or old woman who needs a heart surgery, they may just say you deal with the consequences, especially if your skin tone ain't the right skin tone.
Yes.
See, I don't think that these brothers are really realizing. They're looking at it like, oh, you're trying to make us take the test. Well, I'm hoping that you don't contract COVID-19, but you also have to understand that when you do, you're at the will of these same people who you say you don't trust. These same people are going to be making the decisions about your life. Now, I know you can take your vitamins and get that, but black men especially, are not that healthy in the first place. We're not the healthiest group of men, in this country. And so looking at it from my perspective, I said, well, let me get around to this, and let me try to figure out what's the response going to be if I tell them, hey, don't go to the hospital, because they're not going to treat you anyway. They feel that they have a right to go to the hospital, but the more I start pulling, the more jewels came out of it. I'm like, these are leadership issues. My God, you don't want to stand on your word. You're wishy-washy. So I'm getting all kinds of jewels. I got all kind of shows I can do, on all kind of broadcasts I can do about this, because it's like, it shows that you're not ready to be a leader of a community. You're not ready to be the leader of a household. If you're more concerned with your individual self than you are the greater good of society, then that says that that's a deficit in your leader quality, that you're deficit in your leadership qualities. And what I mean is, if I'm telling you that people are going to pass, people who need other treatment are going to die because you refuse to take the test, or because you refuse to take the vaccine, but you still are willing to go to the hospital and clog up a space, even though your decision was not to take the vaccine, then what does that do? That means you're more concerned about your individual self than you are about the rest of society. So are you going to make a good leader, or are you going to be selfish? Is that really something? It helps you dissect the quality of men that you're dealing with. Most men, they didn't really say anything. Some guys said, well, I'm not, but there was a virulent minority of men who were adamant about, I'm going to go anyway, and how dare you say that, and all the sort of name call. They behave largely like we see the response when we try to hold our lovely ladies accountable for their activities. It's the same response.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Man. Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming in, man, especially with your schedule.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. And if you would just, kind of closing out, tell us a little bit about your philosophy on fathering and where that is as you see it in the Black community at this current moment. Take us out a little bit with your thoughts about that.
Well, I think that the need for Black fathers is definitely underrated, but I don't want to be called in at the point where the fire is at 5 alarms. I should be there from the day the child is born. In other words, don't call your child's father when your son is 15 and a half years old and he's standing toe to toe with you, and he doesn't respond the same way as he used to when you would yell and scream at him. Don't call the father in then, because at that point you're dealing with basically you're dealing with a man. You should allow your sons and their fathers to interact with each other from the day he's born or before, if possible. And you should never interfere with that relationship, because when you do, you don't hurt the father, you hurt the son. You hurt the daughter too, but I'm speaking from the perspective of the son. So I've been extremely active in my boy's life. I got divorced back in 2010. And I was recalling to my sons, I said, I've been taking you guys to different martial arts practices and karate practices and baseball and all that every day of the week, except Sunday, for the past 11 years. Every day I would pick them up at their school or pick them up at their mother's house, take them to these different functions, no matter what I was doing. I could have had court that day. I could have been overseas and flew home the night before just so I could have an opportunity to pick my children up on Thursday and spend that hour and a half with them, even if it's just driving. And most of the time, of course, they're participating in the activity. So it's a 30-minute drive. I get to interact with them, and a 30-minute back to their mother's house. I get to act with them. But I did that every day because they were my priority. Now, at this point, I got a 14-year-old in high school and a 12-year-old who started middle school. They don't need me as much as they used to. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to be a father, you have to put your children as a priority. There could have been times when I'm knee deep in fine women on a Wednesday, and on Thursday afternoon, I'm at my son's school waiting outside for him to come outside, and I'm gonna pick him up and pick his brother up. I could be having a wonderful party all week, but come Friday afternoon, I'm picking my sons up, and we're gonna spend our weekend together, and we're gonna go to the park and do push-ups and shoot bow and arrows and all these sort of things. What I'm trying to tell you is my sons, my children were my priority, especially when they were little. So most fathers are not ready to be fathers. If you're not ready to make those boys for that short time period when they're little kids, if you're not ready to make them your 100% priority, then you don't need to be a father. That's where I started off with. Now, as far as what they needed to be men, they needed to be physically tough. So I enrolled them in all sorts of martial arts classes. That costs money. So there's a financial aspect of being a father. You're going to have to invest, just like you invest in any other thing. They're an investment. Who did I invest I invested in my children. What did I do? I surrounded them by other strong, dominant, masculine men from whom traits they can pull. Their sensei, their Qigong, or Sifu and Kung Fu, their sensei in Shotokan, their professors in jiu-jitsu, all these different places. And I allow these men to be around my sons, and they're able to pull traits, because I don't think I have everything they need. I have some qualities that I'm proud of, but I come up short too. But I also have some other qualities that there are other qualities that other men can help contribute. But the main thing is I'm orchestrating this. I'm pulling the puppet strings on it. They're surrounded by strong men. I basically got a village of men. I'm paying money for this. Sometimes it's $1,000 a month for these extracurricular activities. But this is more important to me than anything else. So my time and my money and my energy are directed at my kids. On top of that, I love my sons. I tell them that. I'm proud of them. I'm there with them. I don't necessarily baby them. I watch them get pushed over, get kicked, get punched. I don't run into the mat and save them. I let them get up and act like men. I start treating them like men at a young age. I give them responsibilities. I do everything for them that was done for me, and the things that I wish had been done for me when I was a boy. I am the father to my sons that I wish I had. Now, here's the thing, and I don't want to insult anybody, but what I'm saying is many of us had deficiencies in our childhood, and we pass those on to our kids because we're so arrogant as to believe, well, I'm all right, so you'll be all right. No, you have to make yourself, you have to be the father that you wish you had, and you have to put yourself you literally have to put yourself in your children's shoes and ask yourself, am I doing a good job? Are you doing a good job? I've asked my children that. How am I doing? Am I doing okay as a dad? Imagine that. I'm 30-something, 40-year-old man asking my 5 or 6-year-old, how am I doing? Am I doing a good job as a dad? And, and I will apologize to them because I don't let my ego get in the way of me doing a good job. I apologize. Yeah, early on, there's corporal punishment, but I believe in using that sparingly, and you let your children know ahead of time why they would be punished corporally. And me, I have certain rules. If you lie to daddy, if you steal, or if you hit your brother, right? Now, inferred in that, if you lying, that means I can't trust you. If you stealing, that can also mean stealing somebody's value of stuff. And choking your brother, because if you choke your brother or fight your brother, what does that do? That puts me in a situation where I got to choose sides between children that I love, my children, and I can't do it. So I've asked them not to do that. For those particular things, they'll get spankings for them back in the day. But at this point, at this age, these young men, 12 and 14 years old, these are grown men. You got to cut that out. That corporal punishment ends. All you do is just make them angry because it's not going to even hurt. And so all you're doing is just making them angry. If you don't catch them when they're young and discipline them and bring them up right, then you're going to have a problem when they get older. But these are the sort of things. And what I want to do with my children, and I guess my barometer is, I'm dealing with them now so you all don't have to deal with them later. That's what I'm doing. I'm making my children men that you can be proud of and respect later. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. So that you guys don't have. So when you look at these boys, these little black boys, you all as Black America, Black men, or whoever, you'll be proud to say, well, that's part of our tribe right there. You understand what I'm saying, brother?
Absolutely do. Thank you, Attorney Spurling. Appreciate your time. I'm gonna pull you down and I'm gonna close out. So I'll hold tight 1 second. Thank you all for joining us, the Institute for Black Male Studies, with our interview with Attorney Dennis Spurling. You can check him out on his YouTube channel. Look for Dennis Spurling Unfiltered. You can also find him on Facebook. You could definitely pick up his books, Rules to Live By, and support his work, as well as supporting the Institute for Black Male Studies. So thank you for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.